We are two book ramblers.
A podcast to get you to read beyond the lines.
Like Elvis said, the sun's down and the moon's pretty. It's time to ramble.
About books. Today in Two Book Ramblers, Inside Job. Writers writing writers.
A common advice given to authors is to write about things that they know. Well, writers do know about writers and the process of writing. Therefore, it should not be a surprise that some very worthy titles feature writers as their main characters. We have compiled a list of such books for you today, and we're going to talk about the writers in each of them. We're going to start with The 13th Tale by Diane Setterfield, and this book features two writers, Vida Winter and Margaret Leah. Vida is the author of 12 very famous fantastic tales and a 13th missing one. And when she arrives to old age, she feels the need to reveal her story and her tragic past. So she hires Margaret Leah for the job, whose past is also pervaded by secrets. This book has such a gothic feeling to it, and the 2006 edition by Edria Books has the perfect gothic cover. You can almost feel the old book smell coming out of the pile of vintage books with fabric bookmarks, and for that reason, we have chosen it for our cover gallery this week. Our second book is The Information by Martin Amis, and this one also features two writers, Richard Told and Win Berry. And this is the story of two novelists, one successful and the other one a failure. And one of them, I bet you can guess which one, plots the literary and literal demise of the other. And if you have been feeling lately like you want to take some revenge, but at the core you're just a lighthearted individual, this book is great bibliotherapy to get rid of those vengeful feelings. Let's continue with Misery by Stephen King. And the writer in this book is Paul Sheldon. If your mood is a bit darker, you know Stephen King is not going to disappoint. And in Misery, there's a best-selling novelist, Paul Sheldon, who has a car accident and he ends up being tended by a woman who claims to be his number one fan. And this fan slash caretaker becomes Sheldon's captor, and she's demanding him to rewrite one of his books. And knowing Stephen King, you can imagine what persuasive techniques she's going to use. There is a 1990 movie adaptation of the book with Kathy Bates and James Caan, and you can watch the trailer in our page.
The book I want to talk about is The Angel's Game by Carlos Ruiz Zafón, and it features David Martin. This novel is a sequel to The Shadow of the Wind in the Cemetery of Forgotten Books series. And living in an abandoned mansion in Barcelona, a young writer pens sensationalist novels about the city's underground. When one day, in one of the rooms of the house, he finds documents indicating there might have been foul play involved in the death of the previous owner of the mansion. Barcelona is almost another character in this novel. You can follow on David's footsteps with the aid of a travel guide in thebooktrail.com. You can visit the Raval Quarter and the Sagrada Familia, which is a must-see even if you do not read the book. The guide even includes the location of David's apartment in Calle Princesa.
And now it's my turn to talk about the Guernsey Literati and Potato Peel Pie Society by Marianne Schaffer and Annie Barrows. And the writer featured in this book is Juliet Ashton. Every time I talk about this book, I have to start with a sigh, because this epistolary novel is so well done that even reluctant readers will devour it. Juliet is a writer in post-World War II London, and one day she receives a letter from a man in Guernsey that has found her name written inside a book. And this starts a correspondence between them that reveals details of Guernsey under the recent German occupation. And this book will tug at your heartstrings, but it's so beautifully done. And if the novel captivates you, wait until you see pictures of Guernsey. You would like to book a trip immediately. And if you do so, make sure to visit the Guernsey Harbor and La Valette Underground Military Museum to relive some of the story in the book. You might have noticed that the title of the book features a peculiar dish, potato peel pie. And this dish has a lot of relevance in the book. And we have found two recipes that recreate this dish, one found in novelicious.com and another one in a blog called Culinary Adventures with Camila. And both of them look delicious and not overly complicated, so if you want to attempt it, we have links to both of them in our page. Before I let go of the Guernsey Literaria and Potato Peel Pie Society, I just want to let you know that there's a Netflix original movie recently released that lovers of the book would greatly appreciate.
Another book featuring writers is Will in the World, How Shakespeare Became Shakespeare by Stephen Greenblatt. This is a nonfiction book about the ultimate writer, William Shakespeare himself, and how he became the literary figure we know today. If reading a book about Shakespeare inspires you to read his works, there is an infographic from Goodreads.com to help you decide which one to read next. The infographic starts by asking you a question, and depending on the answer you select, it'll take you to the next question and so on until you arrive to the title you should read. And according to the infographic, I should read Much Ado About Nothing.
And I should read A Midsummer's Night Dream. And now we have arrived at Book versus Book. We have chosen two novels by Michael Chabon this week. He has two books that features writers as main characters, and they're both examples of his mastery of language. So what's your pick?
My pick is Wonder Boys, and it features Grady Tripp. And the novel revolves around two friends, one of which is prone to dissipation, and the other one is a writer stuck on page 2611 of his book. There's a movie adaptation from the year 2000 with the same title, and it stars Michael Douglas, Tobey Maguire, Robbie Downey Jr., and Frances McDormand.
And my pick is The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, featuring Joe Cavalier and Sammy Clay as the writers. And they are a couple of Jewish cousins, one of whom is a fan of Houdini and smuggled himself from Prague to New York City escaping the Nazis. And together they create a comic book series whose hero is called the Escapist. And you can read this book while drinking a beer cocktail combining Pilsner, apple juice, and lemon juice served on a Colin glass. And you can find the recipe for this drink in Team Featherless Are You There, God? It's Me, Margarita.
Head over to our page and cast your vote for your favorite book. Approaching the end on a lighter note, here's a book for our 6-word book review. The title is The Book of Joe by Jonathan Tropper, and here's my review. Contemporary and humorous prodigal son parable. You can write your own 6-word review by visiting our page.
We're going to take a brief break, and we're going to come back with guesswork. Welcome back. Let's start by revealing the answer to last week's guesswork. And it was Lizzie's Story by Stephen King. For this week, we have a book with two writers as characters. One is a poet and the other one is his editor. And we're going to read you the first line and an excerpt for you to guess the title. Here's the first line.
I was a shadow of the waxwings lane by the false azure in the window pane.
And here's the excerpt from page 69.
Often, almost nightly, throughout the spring of 1959, I have fear for my life. Solitude is the playfield of Satan. I cannot describe the depths of my loneliness and distress. There was naturally my famous neighbor just across the lane, and at one time I took a dissipated young roomer, who generally come home long after midnight. Yet I wish to stress that cold, hardcore loneliness which is not good for a displaced soul.
If you think you guessed the title, you can tell us your answer in our page. And before we say goodbye, we want to tell you about two books being released this week that we would like to recommend. The first is The Best American Short Stories, and this year the editors are Curtis Sittenfeld and Heidi Peitler. As it goes with collections of the Best American Short Story, it is not unusual to find some real gems in them. And this year includes stories from T.C. Boyle, Emma Cline, Mary Gateskill, and many others. The second book we would like to talk about is To Be a Man by Nicole Cross. And this is also a collection of short stories. And in each of them, Nicole Cross tells us the intricacies and experiences of being a man or a woman in different relationships. The characters in these stories are men and women in different ages and with different relationships that tie them together. And the settings of the story also have a wide range of locations and time periods.
If you know of any other books about writers and their dilemmas, please let us know at our page, twobookramblers.com. And if you would like to purchase any of the books covered in our show today, head over to our TBR Bundles page for a list of titles. If you enjoyed our show, rate us and review us wherever you listen to podcasts.
Until next time, do as Shakespeare said,
And love all,
trust a few.
do wrong to none.